Mike Yursich?
Yeah, baby steps. Like Jenny said, this isn't necessarily going to be a game where the Cowboys are going to have to really open things up. But this is another chance for OSU to see what this offense is made of, and even if they're going to be conservative with a lot of Yursich's play calls, a lot of the guys that Yursich recruited are out there. You got his quarterback and Mason Rudolph. He played a bit of a role in getting Chris Carson here. A lot of these young wide receivers, these are guys that he found fit for the system he wanted to run, and now they are all together playing on the same page. So this game, this season, I think all of it is going to be a big reflection on the type of job that Mike Yurcich is doing. And you're right that at this point he's not simply not a hot commodity on the coaching market. People aren't talking about Mike Yurcich as the next big thing, but these are the kind of seasons and the kind of situations that he can put himself in to get the Cowboys back up to some of those top offensive rankings. So another thing that we got to remember here as well as we talk about Yurcich and the offensive struggles. This is only going to be Mason Rudolph's fifth career start. A lot of those short passing, situations that we saw against Central Michigan where it looked really vanilla. There were situations where Rudolph was checking down a lot. He was going very quickly through his progressions. And give credit to a Central Michigan defense that maybe is a bit underrated than what we're giving them credit for. So as Rudolph continues to develop, as these guys kind of cohesively bring in this new game plan with all these new assistant coaches OSU has brought in, I think they're going to have the opportunity to take a few steps forward, and so fans can maybe grow to appreciate what Mike Yurcich is really made of.
Kyle, it's a great point. We got to keep our eye on the MAC, keep our eye on Central Michigan. It'll be interesting to see how we look at that game given 2 months down the road.
Right.
Is Central Michigan going to be somebody playing in big games? Might they be in a bowl? How will that reflect on the Cowboys? We may not look at last Thursday's opener as the disappointment that we sort of view it now. Kyle, Jenny, you guys got stories planned that really tie into the opening week. I'd like you to talk about that. Kyle, let's start with you. One of the big dramas, of course, on late into OSU, the home opener, is the return of The Voice. Larry Reese back from his battle for cancer, but The Voice, capital V, is back. But how about his voice? Kyle, what do you know about Larry and how he'll sound on Saturday?
Right. Talking with Larry on the phone today, his voice sounds great. It's not necessarily the same booming and sharp one that he had before going through all the radiation and the chemotherapy, but he's still got it. He's still a guy who has that deep kind of bass vocal cords that are going to ring out across a stadium, and he's excited. But at the same time, for the first time really in his life, his voice has become a bit of a weak point for him. He sees the full irony in the fact that he's the PA guy for OSU, and now he had throat cancer, and it has affected some things. So, when he's up in the booth on Saturday, he's going to have a few glasses of iced tea, some lozenges, some cough drops, some things to kind of help him along the way. But he really has no idea how he's going to perform, just because this is going to be the first time that he's going to be required to talk like this for a 4-hour span or however long the game lasts. So another interesting aside to it is obviously before the game he's going to want to preserve that voice, but his job is to talk to people. As the deputy AD, as a guy who's in charge of a lot of fundraising initiatives and things like that, he has to be walking around talking to people in the skyboxes they have there, networking, continuing trying to get more people to invest in the program. So that's important to him. He's a guy that everyone who's going to see him on campus tomorrow is going to want to talk to him, and that's just not the best situation for him in preserving that voice. But this is a game that he's had circled on the calendar for a long time now. A lot of fans didn't look at this as the Central Arkansas as a premier game, something that they were really looking forward to other than the home opener, but not the case with Larry, just with the big delay, knowing that this was going to be his return back. It's going to be an emotional experience for him, being that he's been with this program for so long. He's an OSU grad, and it means a lot more to him than just a job. So to get back in there and to get a sense of normalcy, it's been really refreshing and big for him after everything he's been through.
Maybe Larry should play it a little bit like the Cowboys offense, starting off a little conservative.
Right, and that's what Larry said. That's kind of the problem. OSU runs up 4 or 5 touchdowns in the first half. He's gonna be feeling pretty hoarse.
Jenny, you're writing about Mason Rudolph and another side of him that has not been all that evident. We saw his story, the rumors. We've written a little bit about his trip to the Holy Land this summer, and you're telling us a story about the man behind that trip.
Yeah, obviously Mason Rudolph, as we talked before, making his first home start as the Cowboy quarterback. We thought it would be a good day to pull back another layer on Mason Rudolph's story. And yeah, we've had several mentions, and I know it's been around that he went to Israel during his downtime this last spring. But I had a chance to talk to him a little bit about that, and he revealed some more details about that trip. And he went with his grandparents, and in talking to him, found out that it was really his grandfather that has been very instrumental, in addition to parents, his other grandparents, in really growing his faith over the years. So I got a chance to talk to his granddad. His name is Jim Logan. All of the grandkids, he's got 5 of them, call him Datch. He says he doesn't actually know where the nickname came from. It's, I guess, a creation of Mason's mom, and he's not sure what it means, but that's what everybody calls him. Kind of a cowboy, if you will, living in Virginia, has a farm, has some horses, and he really was a guy from when Mason was a young age, saw his granddad, preaching and sharing his faith, and that really helped to grow in Mason. I think what we've seen as much as anything, even though we haven't seen it in Stillwater yet, but in all these other games and other interactions that have happened, you get the sense like Mason Rudolph's a guy that has a maturity and sort of a different air about him, that it may be a little bit beyond his 20 years of age. And so, and diving into that a little bit, it really became a story of faith, a story of a relationship with his granddad, and something that I really enjoyed writing and reporting. And I hope people enjoy it because, I think it's just another, like I said, another layer of Mason Rudolph. I think we're going to be sharing a lot of these type of stories as time goes on, because it looks like he's going to be a guy that's playing quarterback in our midst for quite some time.
Thanks, Jenny. Jenny, I want you to stay around to talk to Jason. We're bringing in Jason Kersey to talk about the OU Tennessee game. Jason, where are you right now?
I am sitting in the lobby of the Courtyard Marriott Knoxville Airport. So it's not great scenery behind me, but this was the best place to do it.
And Jason, how close are you to Neyland Stadium?
We're a little ways from Neyland Stadium right now, probably 10 or 15 minutes away. The airport's kind of out of town, so we're going to head over there here in a little bit and check everything out.
Jason, the big story, of course, OU Tennessee, ESPN national game, really one of those exotic, eagerly anticipated games that Joe Castiglione and Bob Stoops schedule every year for the Sooners. This one on the road, and the big story has resurfaced again. Eric Striker tells us that he's tired of people blowing gas up a dash of the SEC. Let me ask you this, Jason. After you wrote that story and the reaction to it, where does this rank on the bulletin board scale?
Well, I don't think that it is quite, what was it, Dominique Franks saying that Tim Tebow wouldn't be a top 5 quarterback in the Big 12, or
Orange freaking Christmas.
Or Larry Burdine saying whatever it was that he said about Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush before the 2004 national championship game. But it's up there, and it's certainly riled people up here in Knoxville. I've been on a few radio stations here in Knoxville, and that's always the first question. I sat next to a Tennessee season ticket holder on my flight from Charlotte to Knoxville last night. One of the first things he said was something about Striker need to keep his mouth shut. So, I mean, the people here definitely are aware of it, and I think they'll probably let him hear it tomorrow.
Jenny, do you think it's at all interesting that how the SEC sensibilities are maybe offended by this? I don't know if anybody takes time to really sort of criticize the Big 12. Isn't it interesting that there's such – he didn't say anything about Tennessee. He said it about the SEC. How does this change the bulletin board level of that quote?
Well, I agree. I think that it is bulletin board material, but it's really if you actually read what he said, you're right. It's not super I mean, it's not like he's taking pot shots at Tennessee or their talent or anything like that. He was actually speaking more about people outside the SEC and the hype that gets ginned up by national media and other people who look at the SEC as all powerful. So I think if you actually look at what he said, he's not knocking the SEC. I mean, nobody he wasn't faulting anybody in the SEC for what they've done. He was just saying, hey, everybody else needs to chill out and actually evaluate the SEC for what they are. And that's a really good conference. But he's got a great point in the fact that you look at a team like Mississippi State gets ranked 25th in the latest AP poll, which again, it doesn't count for anything, but it kind of gives you a gauge of where people are thinking. And Mississippi State is no more of a top 25 team than about 8 other teams probably should be there over them, but because they're an SEC team, I think they get the benefit of the doubt as being better than some of those other teams. So I think that's just it's almost human nature. You don't even think about it, But I think Stryker had a good point. But obviously, the way he said it, you start throwing in a dash dash,
A dash dash,
a dash dash, a dollar sign, however you want to say it. It's going to rile people up. I think that just added another layer to it right there.
Okay,
Well,
guys, I tell you whose bulletin board it belongs on. Kirk Herbstreit, College Game Day. They should be all fired up. They should be
That's
coming
true.
after Eric Stryker. Of course, they're not playing the Sooners on Saturday. The Vols are. And Jason, what's the difference between this Vols team than the one that Butch Jones brought to Norman last year?
Well, the big noticeable difference is the quarterback. Last year their quarterback was a pocket passer who couldn't move much, and OU tends to be better against quarterbacks like that. When they play against guys who can move around, they have a lot more trouble, and Joshua Dobbs is a guy who can move around. I think that is going to affect the way OU attacks Tennessee. I think they're going to have to be a little bit more careful about rushing Eric Stryker. Attacking him from that way, because when you do that with a quarterback like a Joshua Dobbs, he's going to be able to spin out of those things and get outside the pocket a little easier. So I think that affects it. They're also a little bit more experienced than they were last year. They're playing the game at home, which is, regardless of what Bob Stoops says, it's a big deal. This is a giant stadium that a lot of these guys on OU's team have absolutely no experience playing in anything like it. And also, I come back to that guy I sat next to on the plane last night, talking to him and talking to some other people around Knoxville. This is arguably the most anticipated game in this city, in that stadium, in a decade. And the reason is these are a lot of very, very anxious fans who've been waiting a long time to be relevant again, and they feel like they're just this close. One big non-conference win over a team like Oklahoma, they feel like is going to be what finally pushes them back into the national conversation. This is going to be a very, very fired up crowd tomorrow.
Jason, that's interesting. Because I took some questions on our Power Lunch live chat yesterday, and I'm sure you've got some of these questions either via Twitter, email, or the chats. But I get the feeling like for actually both fan bases, this is kind of a gauge game. I think Tennessee fans are fired up about the possibility of what this Vols team could do, what they could be playing in the SEC East. I think they feel like obviously Georgia may be the team they're chasing, but if you beat Georgia, you got a great chance to get to the SEC championship game, and we all know where that could lead. On the OU side, I think there's a lot of OU fans that want to believe that with the Lincoln Riley offense, Baker Mayfield, Joe Mixon, the changes on defense, that this Sooner team is better than a lot of people are maybe saying they will be. But this is the type of game that Sooner fans want to see. They want to see how excited should I be? And if OU can go on the road and win this game, I think that ups the excitement level by OU fans. Because right now I think a lot of people are sort of, not getting as emotionally invested in this team as we've seen maybe in past years, the belief that this is a national championship caliber team. I just think people are kind of, waiting a little bit, and this could be a game where it could really change that perception. So I think for both fan bases, this is really a game that they're kind of waiting to see, how does my team play? Just how good could they potentially be?
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely, because with OU last week against Akron, the offensive line did not play well against
No.
Akron's defensive line. And Lincoln Riley said that Akron's defensive line is better than you think, and maybe that's true. But they're not Tennessee's defensive front. Tennessee's defensive front is really good. Most of their best players are are linebackers or defensive linemen. And so this game is huge for the offensive line. See how good they really are. And it's also huge for the secondary because Tennessee's passing game had a pretty big game last week against Bowling Green, and we've heard a lot of talk for months about how much better this secondary is. We really don't know if that's true or not because Akron's offense was horrendous, so we don't know if that's actually true or not. We're going to find out if it's true tomorrow.
Guys, Jason, I heard something on the radio yesterday. It was an opinion offered that perhaps if OU wins this game, the narrative will be, well, Tennessee wasn't as good as everybody thought it might be. A team that's just sort of just getting in the top 25. And if the Sooners lose, it will be, oh my gosh, this is proof that they're not as good as we thought they'd be. The idea that the OU was in a no-win situation. Do you buy that? And have you changed your idea? If we could do your picks right now, would you change your pick?
I would not change my pick. I'd stick with Tennessee. I picked Tennessee 34-31. I'm going to stick with that. But in terms of this being a no-win, I don't buy that at all. I think this is a huge opportunity for OU. I think if they win this game, it is a big deal. Now there may be some people who say Tennessee isn't as good as anybody thought they were or whatever, but I think just for OU's own momentum, carrying them into Big 12 play, and for, like Jenny said, the excitement around the program, I think it's huge if they win this game tomorrow.
Jenny,
well, and
go ahead.
I think too. I know I was just going to follow up. I think what Jason said a little bit ago about some of those areas that Tennessee is going to test. That to me sort of removes some of that no-win situation. Obviously, if in in another 2 months we're looking in Tennessee's, 3-8 or something. Okay, well, then they're not as good. We were wrong, they were wrong. But you look at the really top-notch groups on this Tennessee team, like Jason said, that defensive front, some wide receivers and some running backs and a quarterback that can really play. The areas that OU looks like could be determining factors in their season-long success are really going to get tested on Saturday. So if it was, strength versus strength and weakness versus weakness, maybe I'd think differently. But there's a lot of strength versus weakness out there, or perceived strength and weakness, I think. So we're going to get a chance to find out. Maybe that O-line is better than we thought. Maybe the secondary is improved, or the opposite. I think a lot of that is going to flesh out on Saturday.
Jason, before I get you out of here, real quick, a couple questions. The suspension of the Vols defensive tackle, I think, is Danny O'Brien. What impact does that have on them?
Well, I mean, I think it certainly has an impact. I mean, that's one of their guys that we're going to depend on in that rotation. But I still think they have a lot of other guys that can really play. And so, I don't know that that's going to be any sort of determining factor in the game.
And give us a pitch on your story that you're writing for the Saturday editions of the Oklahoman.
Yeah, the story that I've written is kind of about how this game shows the opportunities that were sort of blown by some of the recruiting classes that came, and especially between 2011 and 2013. A lot of those guys aren't around, and those are guys. 2011 class of the 17 that signed, there are only 6 that didn't quit or get kicked off the team. Jordan Phillips went to the NFL, so that he doesn't really count. He's one of the 6. And then of the other 5, there's really only a couple that are big contributors. That'd be Frank Shannon and Nila Kasatati. The others are guys who are still here but haven't really contributed much. And you notice between those 3 classes, the areas where they really took the biggest hits are where they have the biggest problems. And that's in the secondary, on the offensive line, and at receiver. And those sorts of failures are what cost James Patton and Bruce Kittle their jobs, cost Jay Norvell his job, and they're just now able to sort of they're just now getting to a point, I think, where they can get this stuff turned around. But they're still a very young team. More than half of the depth chart, the offensive and defensive depth chart for OU, have been in Norman for less than 2 years, and that's not a place OU wants to be.
Jenny, the final word will be yours. Barry is off floating with the Vol Navy in preparation for a story in the Oklahoman on Saturday. But are the Sooners too young and too inexperienced at those key positions to win on the road against an SEC team?
Well, by the way, I was going to ask Jason if his next stop was to go fish Barry out of the Tennessee River. It sounds like that is the case. Good luck, Jason. I think that is a great point. The fact that, you really are looking at, for example, a secondary that, while Zach Sanchez is obviously proven, you're looking at a bunch of first and second year guys largely at other secondary positions. Does that become just too much for them to handle? I do have Tennessee winning. I think I've actually got the same score as Jason. I swear I did not copy off of your paper, Jason. I promise. I'm doing bad enough on my own. I think I just picked everybody to cover this week. I think I just said, you know what? I'm picking every game to cover. So
I'm gonna stop sending my picks to the whole staff because you're just stealing my picks.
But I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a really good game. I just think at home. I thought Barry had a fantastic line today in his story about Neyland Stadium. The fact that if you're looking to see sky, you got to stand on the field and look straight up. It's a huge stadium. As Jason referenced, people are fired up. To me, that'll just be the little bit of extra juice that gets Tennessee over the top in some of those key matchups. But I think it's going to be a heck of a game.
Thanks, guys. Listen. Speaking of things we can stop sending to the rest of the staff, I got another one for you, Jason. Keywords, Pomeranian DNA. Just throwing it out there. Hey, that's all for this edition of Football Fridays Hangout, but you can stay with the best coverage team every day at News OK and every morning in the Oklahoman. Have fun in Knoxville.
Bye.